I failed in everything. I was almost on the list for the student exchange program. I was almost a professional cyclist, and it was quite hard to stomach, to live through failure and failure because I was so close, I felt so close. And one day an old pastor asked me after church, "Lehel, have you ever thought about studying theology?" And I brushed it off because that wasn't my thing. One day I told God, "Okay, God, if this is something you want me to do, let it be successful." Those failures were not just failures, but were some steps in which God made me the man who
I love
I
that.
am today.
Welcome, Lehel. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. Before you share your story with us, or a bit about your story, tell us a little bit about you.
Thank you very much for your kind words of welcome. My name is Lehel. I come from Belgrade. I'm a pastor here at the Central Church and youth director for the South Conference.
And you said you're a pastor, but I know that you weren't always a Christian or a practicing Christian. How did that happen?
Yes, well, I was about 17 or 18 when I started coming to the Adventist Church in Novi Sad, where I grew up. My mother was always interested in the questions of faith in Christianity, but she never quite had the opportunity to talk with someone who was really into that. So one day, a new Hungarian-speaking church was opened just nearby where we lived at that time, and she saw some posters on the street, and she went, and the rest is history.
Right, and you went with her and began your journey of faith.
Yes, well, after a couple of months or a year of arguing, because I was against of the ideas that she was speaking about when she got home after these lectures. So yeah.
I like that. I like the idea of arguing, and because it involves not just faith and heart, but also mind. I think that's fantastic. And now you're a pastor, right? And you can look back of some of this journey. What are some of the themes you see, or some of the lessons you feel you've learned through this process, through this journey?
Yes, well, it was quite a journey, to be honest. I mean, I wanted to do so much in my life. In high school, I wanted to go to the US as part of the student exchange program. I wanted to be a professional cyclist. I wanted to study abroad. I wanted to be an engineer. So I tried all of that. And somehow, I don't quite understand everything. I failed in everything. There was some success in everything. I was almost on the list for the student exchange program. I was almost a professional cyclist.
You were the runner-up
Yes.
in everything. Wow.
And it was quite hard to stomach, to live through failure and failure because I was so close. I felt so close. And one day an old pastor asked me after church, "Lehel, have you ever thought about studying theology?" And it was my second year at the mechanical engineering studies in Novi Sad, and it was not going quite well. Yeah. And he knew about that. And I brushed it off because that wasn't my thing. I always wanted to be an engineer somewhere alone behind a computer desk in a workshop.
No people around.
No people around. And it was a strange idea, but every time when I sat down to study maths or something else, this idea came back, like, what if this is it? What if this is the thing I have to do? And I remember quite well, one day I told God, "Okay, God, if this is something you want me to do, let it be successful." And I quit studying maths. I asked my pastor back then what he thinks about that, and he told me, like, "Well, I wanted to ask you about theology for a while now, but then I thought, if it's God's will, you will come to me." And it was a huge thing for me back then. And fast forward, I got into theology here in Belgrade, and after the first semester, I only had one exam that I passed, and a lot more that I haven't. And truth be told, I was really scared because I thought I failed in this, I failed in that. I was always so close, but never quite made it. And Dragan, the dean back then, said to me, well, you came with a lot of baggage of exams to the second semester, will you manage? And I said, I will try. And it was really hard, but I succeeded. And it was such a huge thing for me, and it gave me strength to push forward. And to this day, I always remember that moment and that time when it was so hard. It was not an easy thing to push through, to pass all these exams. But now I see that God has led me through all of these things that I wanted to do, until I found the way that He was leading me on.
Yeah, I'd really like, we don't often talk about failure. We like the stories of success. And I'd really like the idea of God leading us not only through open doors, but also through doors that close on our faces, even if we're not particularly happy with that. And I wonder, how do we manage to root our identity in God and in Christ when we haven't succeeded yet? And when we're facing all these no's, all this almost, but not quite.
Yes, well, the thing I realized now, years later, that even in all those failures, I have learned a lot of things, a lot of important lessons for life. And because I got to know so many different people, I got to know so many different ways of life, that now I understand much more about myself, I understand much more about other people, and I know that even those failures were not just failures, but were some steps in which God made me the man who
I love
I
that.
am today.
The failures that you are facing today are a preparation for the call that God has in your life.
Yes.
Wow, I love it. I love it. What would you say to someone who's out there? This is the last question. What would you say to someone who's out there still not sure about God's will for his or her life?
Pray and try, because you never know until you try. I mean, it's important now, I see it's important to pray even before, but pray through the challenges, through the failures, because if it's a failure, I mean, if you are failing in a process of succeeding, it's important to go to the end. So if there is a failure, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the whole endeavor is a failure and not something that a person should go through, but it's important to keep an open eye and an open mind even through those difficult moments, and to push through, because then after a while, when you look back, you can see a lot more than in those harsh and not so pleasant moments.
Thank you. Pray and try. I like it. It's very balanced. Do the spiritual work, but also do the practical work and see which doors open up for you. Thank you so much, Lehel, for sharing with us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.